So,
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you everybody for coming along tonight. It's a first in this webinar series of Farming Forward, creating and monitoring functioning landscapes. The project's been funded by the Tasmanian Farm Innovation Hub, and it's a Future Drought Fund project, a federally funded one. So the topic that we've chosen is really to address some of the gaps that have become apparent over the last few years, and is really confirmed during my Churchill Fellowship last year when I went to the UK and Germany and the US, looking at how to increase the adoption of successful regen practices, regen outcomes, creating them. And that was that we didn't know how to monitor the impact of our management, and we didn't know how to test new practices. So if we were going to change anything or amplify anything, we didn't have any way of doing that in a low risk, low cost, that was safe for the environment, safe for your budget, and was good for animal performance. So it wasn't that there wasn't a way to do it, it was just that nobody was doing it. So we use a safe to fail trial system, whether that's like what you're talking about, Rob, with the cover crops, or whether it's just with perennial pasture. But any change in management, we do a safe to fail trial. And that's really to just basically filter out the conflicting advice that we inevitably get, whether it's through podcasts or from agronomists or educators, just on YouTube's. So that's predominantly what Graham's going to talk about tonight. So perhaps, Graham, if you introduce yourself to those that don't know you, if that's okay, please.
yeah, sure. Thanks, Celia. Graham Hand. I'm over in East Gippsland at the moment, near Bairnsdale, and just setting up a demonstration farm. I've been working on regenerative, holistic management, grazing since the mid-90s. Just quickly, what I found was that we didn't have a common language, and it wasn't science-based. And I had a little stint with the DPI in Victoria, and I had to find something. And then I got involved with a project with Sydney Uni and Dr. Peter Ampt, and ended up running into David Tongway, which was the monitoring we were using for a big project in southern New South Wales on grassy box woodlands, regenerating the grassy box woodlands. And it was really good because all of a sudden you had a scientifically valid method of monitoring. I think I failed to explain that it's not an opinion. This is all peer-reviewed. It's a peer-reviewed predictive model. So I'll come back to it. But if you measure this on the landscape surface, you can predict stability or erosion, water infiltration, or nutrient cycling. And the way they did it, so David Tongway and Norm Hindley were tasked with what can we look at so we know at the next rainfall and event, is something going to grow, is it going to erode, or is it all just going to run off? And all they did was kept taking samples and measuring everything: soil types, rainfall, plants, vegetation, and kept measuring everything, and then went back to the lab and worked out, well, what was stable. And they also did a lot of this in the field as well. What was stable, what would infiltrate water, and what would cycle nutrients. So it's all done scientific method. It's repeatable, it's published. It is not an opinion, whereas a lot of the time we seem to get stuck in the regenerative ag arguing over beliefs and opinions. So I like to use that line that in the regenerative ag people, we circle the wagons and shoot one another. So it always feels like everyone's arguing and fighting and stuff. So I'll quickly run through why we need this common language and what are the benefits for it, and that whole thing, how to use it, what to think about. But I also would like to expand, if it's okay with the group, just to sort of like solving problems and things like that. I've got a few questions. What can we anticipate is going to happen from different management practices? So, so I'll quickly run through that. I don't want to go too long and then open it up to questions. So if you can start to think about which questions you've got, how does that fit with what other people say? I'm happy to say, this is what I see. This is why I do this. Is it easy? It's definitely not. It's probably the hardest thing we do is regenerative agriculture, and there really isn't a lot of shortcuts I've found. So I was very disappointed to find out that the harder you work, the better it gets. So, but I go off. I'd sat back and thought about that. That probably would have been where I'd started anyway. So yeah, just thank again the funding from the Tas Innovation Hub. This is great money. This Future Drought Fund, my business, Rant. I'm on the board for Rant, and I'm also linked to HMI and Savory Institute. I'm a what do they call me? A trainer in both those areas. So one of the things that I feel like missing too is we get lots of biodiversity. So yesterday I was racing down to ship the cows, and I nearly ran this crew over. There was about 10 of these quail chicks, and this was the only one. I went back to see if I'd squashed any, and this was the only one, and it was cheeping at me going, "Are you my mother?" But that's the sort of ground cover. My coronation as king. All are invited. And I don't know where that is. That you, Celia? No.
No, sorted though.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so it's just we're getting tree regeneration, we're getting native grasses mixed in, a bit too much poa-tussock that we're sort of reducing. So just all those things, it is extraordinary what happens. Too many snakes and lizards and things like that to be comfortable walking through long grass, but I just wear gumboots. So this was first thing this morning. I'll just play this. Hopefully you can hear it.
No, no, I can't. No. Do I need to do?
Well, yeah, I can barely hear it. This is just, they'd all wandered back up to the top of the strip. That's one of my new Mashona Aubrac Angus heifers, which I think someone was asking me what's she like, and I said she's very feminine. She's got long eyelashes. She's a bit of a stunner. So, but other people have said I only run Zooms so that I have a social life. So, yeah. So, but yeah. So some of these are all some of them have got low gut fill. That's what I'm saying. The utilization isn't as hard, but some of these cows, these big Herefords, aren't adapted. So you would have seen my squat sort of thing. And then this is after they've moved. But the animal performance, there's another one of those Mashona Aubrac crosses, and lots of Herefords and stuff. So we're up to, so we've got about 90 calves and probably 140, 150 adult cows, not all in this mob. So, and then there's another 100 dairy cows on adjustment as well. So I just thought, we're actually doing this. So this was about 7:30 in the morning, and I was saying I wanted to get them full. There's too many low gut fills, but hopefully that comes through at some stage, or I'll upload it. So yeah. So just quickly, I won't spend time on this. I like to point out that current agriculture's got too high risks, and too little of each dollar that farmers earns actually ends up in a farmer's pocket. So red is the debt that's sort of going berserk. It's kicking away. It's going to win easy, I think. This is the gross farm income. So this is what ABARES would quote whenever on Landline or the Country Hour. They only quote this figure. They never quote this figure. And I keep
See you later,
writing.
beautiful people.
Pardon? Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so I keep quoting this figure just because it's the what farmers' share of this blue line is. And a 17% drop in gross value produces a 93% drop in net value. So too much of each dollar's going to inputs, machinery, seed, everything like that for farmers to be viable. So, like they keep talking about we're going to go through 100 billion, or that's the target, but they never look at it rarely ever crosses 10 billion for farmers. So this gap, this declining terms of trade is forever widening because the expenses always get higher. I predicted on one of my other mentoring groups that once the input suppliers saw how much that this income had gone up to 20 billion for farmers, it wouldn't take them long to take a fair share of that back. And that's exactly what's happened. So I won't go on about it. It's about minimizing losses, not maximizing production. If you focus on production, you cannot get profit and regeneration. They're just mutually exclusive. So the problem is everyone thinks this. So UTAS, when I was talking to one of the women there, and she said, "Oh, you're right, Graham. Whenever we write an application, we will increase production to increase the environment." I go, they're not linked. All the evidence shows that we're overstocked, we're overcropping, and we're actually going too hard at things. So dairy is a really good example. There's a lot of data showing that if you reduce the stocking rate, the profit goes up and so it happens on nearly every farm. The MLA and GRDC, they all have these phosphorus tools that show we're overusing phosphorus. I don't ever see anyone say, "Oh, well, has anyone asked their advisor why I'm overusing phosphorus?" Why is there agronomist over putting phosphorus on, and then the MLA and GRDC are producing phosphorus tools to show you that you don't need that much? That's just illogical. It just doesn't make sense. Change your thing. This is the definition we use at RANT, and I use for the definition of regenerative agriculture. So it's a direction, and it's a direction to an outcome, and it's not a practice. You cannot ever talk about practices, and it's how they're managed and what outcome they produce. So no-till as a practice can be fantastic, like Gabe Brown would do, with 100% ground cover and decomposing litter, or it can be a disaster like most people do. So we'll be talking about increasing landscape function to increase biodiversity, profits stable or increasing. It's usually quite easy to increase people's profits, and all it is really just not spending money on inputs and wasting it on stuff. So just got to be a bit careful. There's quite a few people that I work with that, and I understand this because I suffer from it as well, is if there's money in the bank, they spend it. So they start getting more profit in, so they start spending it on other things. So, and I say, I like heavy machinery and we're buying tools and chainsaws and guns and stuff as well. So increasing well-being scores. So all of these you can measure and scientifically valid measurements of what regenerative agriculture is. I don't like the fluffy, I believe it's this or I believe it's that. It's these three things and where they intersect. And when I started that after this, the RANT conference, because the first conference we had, I drew them as 3 circles of the same size, and I just found that people traded the land for money or thought they could, and there's no way you can. It just increases your costs and you get more that declining terms of trade. So what is landscape function? It's measuring the soil surface. And if you measure the soil surface, you can predict water infiltration, nutrient cycling, and stability. So I'll show you those links, but this isn't something that Alan Savory taught me, that it was about the soil surface. But David Tongway, who's training Colin Seiss and myself here, he actually spent years of his life studying this. At the first Gulf War, when they lit up all the oil wells on the way out, I can't remember the names of people. They sent David Tongway in. Well, the World Bank went and got David Tongway to measure what was the damage created by those things. So he's world renowned, just not heard of in Australia, which isn't unusual, I suppose. He's retired now. And sort of got a crook back. So, but yeah, so this has been going around for a long time, peer reviewed, published, and easy to do. This is how we measure it with a tape. You can run the tape downhill because that's the way things go. And then you flag it out and you break it up into different categories if there's a lot of variation. And there's some really interesting stuff that you find, that land that you thought was going well isn't necessarily going well. So these are the things. So if you measure this, you can predict this. So it's like a predictive model. We can't get that link to work today. So I think I gave it to you, Spikey, and we're going to upload it to the RANT website and my website, sort of all the procedures and manuals, and it's got photo standards, it's got a procedure, it's got a manual, and that's what we're doing with trying to help people learn how to do this. You don't need to have to do it to the scientific level, but you need to be able to walk onto your paddocks or onto someone else's paddocks and know, is this going well or not? Most people I don't see do that. So I'll try and explain that as we go. But so nothing new for the first one. If you don't want it to erode, it's got to be covered, and it's got to be 100% covered. Around these areas that I work in and stuff, they say 70% ground cover is good enough. Like you get an acceptable level of soil loss. So it's the what is it called? The universal soil loss equation, USLE. I had to go back and get that. The universal soil loss equation, and the way I flip that, and it's sort of what I do instinctively for some reason, is only 30% of the land's eroding. If you've got 70% ground cover, 30% is eroding. And basically last week, that was what I saw nearly everywhere. So most lands losing, about 10 tonnes per hectare per annum is what I've been seeing. So that's on dairies in southwest Victoria, sheep and beef people all through Victoria and New South Wales. Where they go into that summer grasses, they lose less because they actually can't eat everything like we can down south. We can get every blade of grass down their throats. So, but we lose on average about 10 to 14 tonnes of topsoil per hectare per annum with normal grazing. Cropping's sort of about 3 to 4 times that. I was working with some guys from the Darling Downs, some Queensland guys, and we were talking, and I said, I'm measuring on our dairies 14 tonnes of topsoil loss. And they said, you're not having a go. Like all Victorians, you're not having a go, these Queenslanders. they were measuring up to 300 tons on the Darling Downs of topsoil. So I said, yeah, you flog us, so just extraordinary. We saw, Colin and I in central Queensland, we saw a metre loss after Cyclone Debbie. So, it is so important. You cannot have a low-cost, sustainable business if you're eroding and losing your nutrient, your seed, your best organic matter, your best soil. Water infiltration is about basal cover of perennial grass. How much of each hectare is covered with mature perennial grass bases? So they need to be over 2 centimetres by 2 centimetres for them to reside in the environment, was what Tongway and Hindley found. And then how many of those? And I think it's about 20 to 30% cover before you get really good water infiltration and nutrient cycling. So it's the basis of the perennial grass, mature ones, not all those little seedlings and things. They've got to be mature bases. And if the grass grows like that, it's where it meets the soil surface. You grab it and squeeze it with your hands, and that's how big the bases are. And then litter cover, which is from the litter cover. Litter cover, so where did it come from? You want it to come from perennial grasses, and you want it to be decomposing, and then the surface roughness. Nutrient cycling is very similar. Basal cover of perennial grasses, the sugar's being pumped, but you also need, for the fungal component, you need the decomposing litter on the soil surface. And plants like lucerne, chicory, plantain, legumes, taprooty type weedy things like that really don't create litter that actually generates much nutrient cycling. Annual litter doesn't grow as much, doesn't create as much nutrient cycling and good for soil health as perennial grass litter. And all we're doing is doing that. So there it is. I've talked too long. It's got the same soil type, different management. So that it's really evident that this was these two photos were side by side. One was under a perennial grass plant, and one was between the perennial grass plants where you did not have the decomposing litter. So healthy soil surface, if you step on it, you're either going to step on decomposing litter, and you can pull it back and see it composting and starting to merge into the soil, not capped like this one here. I won't point at the screen. I'll actually use my pointer. The not capped like this one and no air spaces, and that's only going to erode. That cannot infiltrate water. It cannot cycle nutrients. So, and it produces number. So, I'll just quickly skip through. I put this in, Rob, just because was this the graphs that you said you hadn't seen?
I think I've seen those ones actually. No, is your presentation available?
Yeah, I sent it to Matthew. So.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah. So I'll send it round to this group. I'll send it round. It might have been. Could it have been the results from the Oakhampton trials and the different recoveries? Yeah, I'll send it around anyway.
Okay.
I just want people to be successful and shift the landscape. So it's about our children's and children's future. It's not like I'm going to be all right, but like we really, I'll be gone before I think it all falls apart unless it really gets a hurry on. But like for our children and their future, we've got to really do this. So that's what drives me. So I'm happy to share any of this and send it around and stuff. So so then it's a predictive model. This is in the material. You can actually, there's an Excel trainer, and all you do is enter in the figures for the scores for soil cover, perennial grass, basal cover, litter cover, cryptogams, moss and lichen, Is it broken? Is there erosion? Is there deposited materials? Is the soil surface roughness? How rough is it? You need it to be rough enough that it slows water flow and doesn't allow surface to move. You need enough basal cover to keep litter in place. You need the litter pushed onto the soil surface so that it's decomposing. And then, surface resistance to disturbances, springiness. And then, how does it react in water for the slake test? And then, can you make a ball out of it for the texture? And if you do those things, measure those things, and there's a whole procedure for it, you can predict the stability, the infiltration, and the nutrient cycling. So it's really, it is not, I think, or I believe. So, I'm in the holistic management crew, and some of them say to me, "Oh, I think you're wrong." And I go, "Oh, well, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I really don't care what you think. Where's your data? Show me the data." And there is heaps of it. We know how to move it. There's probably ways that I haven't even been thought of how to increase it. But all the whole landscape, cropping, vegetable production, all of it needs to have decomposing litter on it. It's no different than gardening. It's no different than healthy forest or healthy bush. All of it, they're all analogues. They need to have perennial plants and decomposing litter between the perennial plants. If you're doing annual cropping, you've got to have the whole ground covered with decomposing litter, and you crop into that. So that's what Gabe Brown does. That's why he can increase soil carbon. That's why he can get all this to work. So it's really, I can't understand what's difficult about it. And it's outcome, it's not there, just a David Tongway measuring bulk density. I'll just skip on a bit because I'm talking too much.
Excuse me, Graham.
Yeah, sure,
Sorry,
Rob.
is it possible to get that tool anywhere for landscape function that was on the previous slide?
Yeah. What I was trying to do, see this link here, David Tongway, it used to be on the CSIRO website, all of this, all the material, and they took it off. So he put it up on this link. I don't understand what this link means, the IINet. I understand IINet, but members at IINet, and you used to be able to pull it all down. But when we tried today, we couldn't get that to work. So I'm going to ask David, is it okay if we put it up on the RANT website and on the others? But if you want any, like I've got a low res version of the manual, and I can send you that trainer. So where's Celia? Could you just write down what I'm promising? I'm sorry, I'm not concentrating enough. Need a third screen. I'm pushing for a third screen.
Yeah, okay.
So the impact of litter, no worries, Rob. And I put this up at the Grassroots Festival. As you if at the same amount of perennial grass basal cover, the same surface roughness, the same rain splash protection, as you increase the amount of decomposition, as it goes from no decomposition to slight decomposition, so it's brown and it's breaking down, to moderate, so it's got visible fungal attack like a healthy compost heap or healthy bush, all of the infiltrations and nutrient cyclings go up. So you need to know how important litter is. The majority of grazing trainers in the world do not understand any of this. I'm trying to think who else trains.
Jim Elizondo, he doesn't talk about it, does he?
No, he doesn't like litter. He says you need a little now and again, but he got very cross with me because I work with the guy Kevin in California, and he's a friend of Jim Elizondo and stuff. He got really cross that I said that you needed litter, and he used to complain to Kevin all the time. So, but he's coming around a little bit. I feel like there's some movement on litter. So, but litter's crucial. you know, a lot of the management and advice doesn't produce it. So all we do is just say, I do that. I'm saying that I'd like to, if I can get funding, I'm going to set up my own verification based on landscape function. And I've sort of been calculating what would be the minimum I would accept. So not this thing, oh, well, you know, I've decided I'm going to get verified and I'm going to do this. There's got to be a minimum level before you can get ticked off as being regenerative in my world. This upsets a lot of people because it's sort of like it's not, you know, I want to be free and stuff. So it really annoys the Americans and those libertarian types because I'm saying, no, I'm not going to tick you off unless you get to this level. Yeah. Typically, we can get to this green level on most grazing properties in the high rainfall zone in 12 months. So I'm accepting at this lower level, and I'm going, you know, really, I'm not going any lower. And and the same with cropping. The numbers are lower, but it's the same. It's the same idea. You know, like what level could you accept in cropping? So, you know, you're sort of not going to have any perennial grass basal area. So you've got to have enough litter to sort of get through and enough decomposing litter to be verified. So I don't really want to do it, but I want to put it out there and change the conversation from lagging indicators to leading indicators to scientifically verifiable rather than sort of some sort of USDA, you know, ecological site description, which is made up of ecologists and soil scientists that don't know really sort of what they're looking at as far as I can tell. So, yeah, so I want to stir the possum up. It's about leaf emergence in perennial grass. So dairy industry knows this really well. It's in, you know, it's in Dairy Australia, MLA. Everyone uses this this picture on the leaf emergent, but they keep saying make sure you graze before that leaf emerges. This is the whole dairy story. You know, you want to eat it before then because it'll die, and once that oldest leaf's dying, you know, it's not available for the cow, and you spent so much money on it. And what happens is you're trading that litter for the nutrient cycling and water infiltration. So on most dairies, they have very, very poor nutrient cycling because they do not have litter. So therefore, they've got to actually add all the fertilizer and provide all the draining. You know, I forgot what it's called, the hump and mound and stuff. So
Hump and hollowing.
yeah, hump and hollowing and stuff. Do you know, like it's,
So,
and this is just some Polaris on, you know, four-wheel motorbike. Yeah, this is just out of Alan Savory's book. To be safe, we assume that grazing has been severe because some plants are always graze severe, and thus we focus on plant growth rate. So I'm not into the eat a third or eat a half. And yeah, this is straight out of Alan's book, and I've measured it all, and we've done trials and stuff. So I was going to stop there. Yeah, I was going to do these just in case these were the graphs you were thinking of, Rob. So I'll send this presentation I'll send out anyway. But what we found was that 3 months wasn't regenerative based on our scientifically valid auditable definition. So this isn't just something that we sort of dealt, you know, like that we play with. I feel like when we're talking to other people, it feels like you're sort of using a different lens to look at the world. So, and they can't understand what we're talking about. So, that's Celia holding some of the work from Oakhampton. It was all sandy, and within 12 months, 15 months, it was back to that. We do the same here. So this is at Wattle Park. That's Tian holding sort of some of our work. So we do the safe to fail trials. We do all that ourselves. So I'll skip forward to this. So we use this as an estimate of landscape function. So I'll include those forms as well. With Celia's written instructions for it as well, haven't you, Celia? Yes. Yeah, so, and I really like this. I think we need to come back to this all the time. If you get advice from anyone, this is what you must ask them. I know it needs question marks behind it, but I'll update that before I send it out. Does this advice increase landscape function and biodiversity? Now, most agronomists will not know what you're talking about. They'll have heard biodiversity and they'll think they'll know about landscape function, but we're talking about scientifically measured landscape function, not some other thing. Does it lower my expenses and debt? All the advice we try and give people is that in 10 years' time, they've got more money in the bank than they have. So, we're not in it to make money for ourselves. I always say, do you think I fly business class? It's just not what we do. We want this to work. So does it lower my expenses, debt and rainfall and market price risk while increasing profit? I'm pretty sure it won't. Does this advice lower inputs and fossil fuel use? We know we've got to do that. I'm pretty sure the advice won't. Does this advice increase my family's and community well-being, both short and long term? So it needs a bit of work. I am not a high literate, but those are the things that we need to be asking people. When you hear new things, when you hear people talking, are they increasing landscape function? There's just been some stuff going around recently that reaching peak sequestration, and I know them and they're friends of mine, but it's nonsense. They don't increase landscape function. In one of those graphs I showed, there's a direct link between nutrient cycling and soil carbon, but they don't do that. So the trees, they've got about 25-30% of the property in trees, it's big property, but they don't increase landscape function. They use nitrogen fertilizer, they re-sow, they run incredibly high stocking rates. So, and I know whether they make money or not, so you'll just have to guess at that. I'm not allowed to say. So, it's like I need to wants to come out. Go back in. Okay. Yeah. So some questions. So I've de-identified them, but because I hadn't asked beforehand. But if you want to ask questions, can you just let me know if you want me to identify or not? So, so managing calving when doing 3 moves a day, there's a lot of considerations in doing this. I asked Bud Williams, who was sort of the original cow whisperer. I said, I struggle to move cows and calves. And this was at a big forum in Hamilton in Southwest Victoria. And he said, well, after you've gone round and woken all the calves up, and I go, oh, not doing that. Then let them have a drink. Not doing that. Then mob them up and let them head in any direction they want to. And then, you can start heading off. And I go, oh, I was 3 for 3. I go, so that's why I can't do it. So Michael Coughlin from up at Holbrook, that's got 4,500 cows, he shifts them with calves once a day, and they're in a mob of 2,000 on one farm and 2,500 cows on the other. For most people, that'd be a nightmare. So I said to Michael in front of everyone, I should wait until I've got people by themselves, how do you do it? And he said, oh, I come out at dawn and shift them. And I go, oh, dawn. And he goes, yeah, and that's my work for the day. And I go, that doesn't sound so bad when you put it like that. So that is how he does that. So when we're doing those moves from, we're in the lanes and we're just, moving the front fence, leapfrogging the front fence, and they're just moving forward another 10 steps, which is what we're on at the moment. all I do is I wind the fence up, the cows move forward, and from day one, I wake the calves up and make them shift. And I train them with voice cues as well. For some reason, I keep reverting back to "come on, bubbies," but which is great when I'm here by myself. It's not so great when there's other people coming here and trying to learn from you. And come on, bubbies, come on, bubbies. But come on, calves, come on. And within a fortnight, everyone, they hear me drive up to wind the fence up, and some of them will start yelling because they're tired and they don't want to move. And I go, nah, you got to move anyway. So as they're just moving down that strip, I just make them move forward until I get them to the point that they will come when they're called. So, and I couldn't believe that it took me so long to realize that you can train them to voice commands. So, and they pick up on your tone. I'll tell them that they're being naughty, and give them a bit of outside voice, and they, and and I'll warm your tail if you don't move now. And you can hear them go, oh, we're tired. So so managing a higher bull, I'm assuming you just take a break. No, we keep going when the bulls are out. We put sort of 3 to 5 bulls out, but the bulls will not leave the cows. So they'll go anywhere that the cows go. So even though the majority of the year, apart from that 6 weeks, they're not with the cows, as soon as I put them out with the cows, they just hang on to the mob and they'll go wherever they are. So if the cows can't get out, the bulls won't get out, is what I find. There might be an issue, if the neighbours got bulling cows or heifers, and you're near a fence that might not be secure, I might worry about that. But we don't have that situation here, and they really like to be in the mob with the cows because they know as soon as I take them out of it, that's the year over for them. So they're hard to get off the cows rather than that. So as long as the cows can't get out, they're usually all right, unless you're up against a fence where there's bulling beside them. But that's the sort of bull you want, that would jump over and serve the neighbors bulling cows. But you really otherwise it's usually not a problem. A permanent bull, I've worked with a lot of people ranging from sort of 3 cows up to 4,500 cows. So I do not recommend leaving them in with the cows. I've tried this a lot of different times. I've tried it myself. You either get the heifers in calf, you'll get someone that sort of is cycling at sort of 4 or 5 months. And so I always recommend taking them out and have them separate. So if you want, so just have a tight calving pattern. Then you all calve together. It's all over in 6 weeks. Then you've got them all the same age. You can make them work harder when the calves get a bit older. All that sort of works much better. Calving all the time means that you can't make them work very hard. So Peter Reynolds up in New South Wales managing Lovegrass, he always had the bulls out, and he always had at least one brand new calf when we were trying to manage the Lovegrass. Much easier when they were all sort of 5 months old. You couldn't lose them. The cows would and we could bash through and open up the Lovegrass and start to grow other C4s or perennial grasses to push out the Lovegrass. I've never seen the only successful management I've seen of Lovegrass is to outcompete it with another C4 summer growing grass. So, and we do that with whatever will grow, paspalum, kangaroo grass, etc. So we would recommend having another bull paddock. We swap that paddock out usually and then put it back into the rotation to renew it. So any Any other questions on that? Was that well covered?
Marshall actually puts down at Glen Huon here, he ends up moving his bulls, because he has I don't know, 2 or 3, I think, with his mob. And he ends up moving them along nearby to them, because he can't actually even set stock then once he's started the multiple moves. He finds he can't even leave the bulls set stock.
Yeah, a lot of people do that. I haven't got to that, but I've kept 4 cows and calves and put them in the bulls to keep them as bulls, so that they don't start joining the young heifers and stuff. And they're going to finish the bull paddock really quick with another 4 cows and calves in there. So I'm going to have to do a big, long, slow rotation with them. So this was sort of about interseeding pastures. So this question was about that. What was the impact of interseeding pasture with multi-species using a modified rotary hoe? So there's less impact with the, that sort of strip rotary hoe. I can't think the
Soil key.
The soil key type thing. There's less damage, but there's still damage to the land. Every time you hoe it or plow it or whatever, you bust up all the fungi. So it's sort of sets it back to sort of the Stone Age, and you've got to start building it again. Doing the soil key and that allows it to populate quite quickly, but it's still the wrong direction. So any of these other plants that I've been sort of like cheeky and rude calling them weeds, like your chicory, plantain, and lucerne and clovers and stuff, they don't produce litter that helps with the fungal component, and they're typically not fibrous rooted. And it's the fibrous roots of the perennial grasses that fluff the soil, provide habitat for the insect-killing fungi, all those things that are needed. Whereas last week, I felt like perennial grasses were just sort of reduced to that, not worthwhile, sort of almost a hatred of perennial grasses. But if you mismanage a perennial grass and don't let it go through its full life cycle and recover and grow litter again, and then graze it hard and then do it again, they're not great. Like they'll, you'll end up with cockchafer, all the different Corby grubs, all those things, because they're not healthy. So a lot of people are comparing a multi-species pasture with a poorly managed perennial grass pasture. If you manage that pasture well, it'll flog any of those multi-species in terms of soil health, water infiltration, stability, nutrient cycling. So the same with humping and hollowing. That'll actually sort of cause a lot of damage. There's a book, Grass Productivity, by Andre Voisin, and he talks about after sort of ploughing or any of these sort of rotary hoeing as the poverty years, because you've busted all those connections and you're starting again. So he was a French dairy researcher. And he just talks about sort of, I really like that description though of the poverty years. So, and I was thinking, that kind offer, Rob, about any data. So, I'd like data on sort of what the landscape function is before it started, ideally with fungal bacterial content and a few other things, and then before and after, and then how long does it take to recover? Because I think you'll get at least, even in your environment, which is sort of probably one of the gentlest environments in Australia, I think it'll take 5 years to get out of the poverty years. It was taking 10 years in France, and that's really non-brittle, good young soils, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we might talk about that a little bit more. So, but I think that we need to sort of doing the. Sorry, Rob.
Yeah, I can do that. Yep, no worries.
Yeah, any of that sort of stuff would just be fantastic. And sort of, even if they're just photos straight down onto the soil surface, I can estimate the landscape function, before and after and stuff. So I'll just quickly skip and then I'll stop and ask you what to cover. This is typically what I see everywhere. This is the 30% bare ground. It's an absolute disaster. Do you know, it cannot make enough soil or carbon or whatever to be sustainable, much less regenerative. So, so there's a really big issue with that. I'll just skip through. I thought I had some other photos, but I forgot them. I must have lost them. I did redo the dung scoring and stuff, so I'll put some more of this, but I'll stop now. That was that verification. Most land management's degrading. If we're going to be regenerating, it's got to be building soil. It's got to be building biodiversity. We're just not doing that. I thought I'd put in some photos of sort of different basal areas and stuff, but I'll do that next time. So how was that? Any comments or thoughts? Any questions?
Did you want to ask yours, Spikey?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's been anything to link the full LFA and the simplified version. Any science, any stats?
No. The dart throw one, Spikey, is that the one you're talking about? That form that we fill out?
Yeah, that was that second form with the columns that you showed us.
Yeah, no, that's Alan Savory's work before. I should stop clicking. Sorry. That was Alan Savory's form, so that was what he did, and all I've done is add in a few things. It's a management tool, not a scientific tool, that one. So that would steer you to, if you did this, this is what, if you got this result, so say you got litter not decomposing, you do a trial, a safe to fail trial on increasing stock density in an area. So it's really, I've got a corrective action form with that. Did I put that in? I can't remember. So
yeah, I think so. I was just thinking that it's a lot more manageable, the simplified form, and
I think if you're managing your farm, that's all you need. I don't think you really need the scientifically valid. So I just so I'd use that and the corrective action, but you can use it for presentations. We've used it for presentations, but it doesn't stand up for being scientifically valid. So you can't use it for research. So because we've been doing that research with UTAS and others and for projects, that's why we've been using the other one. But I used to only ever use that and only train that was the other form. So
yeah, it just occurs to me that you'd have a much bigger evidence base for the processes if you could link the two, because it'd give you a much greater body potentially. Like, I'd be willing to do the simplified measurement as a monitoring tool and hand that over to scientists for research, but am I going to do like 6 full LFAs each year?
No. You'd struggle to get me to do 6.
Firefighter.
What I have been doing is, if people take those photos across the paddock and down as well,
yeah, I'm just going to mute.
Yeah, you're right. And it doesn't worry me at all. Talk underwater. What I do is then I've been putting in that data, because it is sort of data, and then estimated landscape function from the photos. and and I just describe what I see on the photos and why I gave it that score. And then I run it back through that trainer, the Excel soil surface trainer, and punch out the numbers that way. So, so it's about sort of when I was talking about the verification, I put the percentages beside that Excel and stuff, and then I just say, oh, this is what I see when I look at that. And most people agree. But yeah, so it's an estimated LFA and some data from the dart throws, from the random dart throws. So it's not, statistically significant or valid sample. But it does point to which way you've got to go and what's happening on the landscape. No worries. Any other questions, comments?
I've got a quick question.
Yes,
so stability refers to erosion, is that right?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, yeah, that's just been puzzling me for a while. But I
Yeah,
understand
because
now.
they wanted it so as they wanted to measure that as it increased, so everything was rated out of 100. So it was hard to use the word erosion, sort of, to be. So you're increasing stability, you're reducing erosion. So sorry, so the numbers should be bigger, and the bigger the numbers, the bigger that graph. They've done it all, tried to do it all in the one direction. So yeah, how was that? Anything else you'd like me to cover next week, or are they weekly, Celia, or fortnightly?
Weekly.
Weekly. So anything that you want me to cover, I'm happy to talk, as long as we weave it back through that landscape function lens of, I'm happy to talk about any of the practices, any of the designs we've seen, what Celia's seen on her Churchill, what I've seen, in Mongolia, what Celia and I saw in Brazil. We're happy to do that. We just need, what is it that interests you? What would you like to cover? Any of those sort of things. But keep going back through. What I was going to try to do was use the trainer to sort of and run it in real time and have a photo that I ran against the other photo. Just show you that sort of how we estimate landscape function, and then put those numbers in and stuff. But I didn't know whether it'd be too clumsy because you need the manual and you need this and you need that. But we'll send out the low resolution version of the manual, as well as the trainer and any of those. So feel free to cover off anything that you want. I'm really happy to talk about grazing, cropping, any of these sort of things. So what we should do in Gaza. No, that we won't cover that.
So I've been recording this, so I'll send this out when it comes through, and the slides from Graham. So we didn't get through all the slides, Graham, so we'll send them anyway, and they'll.
Yeah, and I might do it, the ones that I didn't get to, or I might leave them in, and then the ones we didn't get to, I'll come back to and explain what that one's about, all that sort of stuff next week.
Yeah, so weekly for 3 months at 6 o'clock. Yeah, it's not a truly convenient time, I realise, with dinner and kids and work, but too much later and Graham runs out of steam, so we go with that.
At the moment, so after this I'll run out, do another cow shift as well. Very good. Oh, thanks for your time. Hope that was worthwhile. And send in any photos, anything you want. Really happy. Any articles, all that sort of stuff. So whatever you'd like to talk about, I'm really happy to cover off on it. So
lovely.
Good to see you all.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. See ya.
Good night. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Graham.
Right.
Hey,